Yes, great. Good morning. Am I on? Can you hear me? Hello. No? Yeah, I think my mic's off or something. I don't know. Of course. The wonders of modern technology. You press the on button and suddenly you are heard. Exactly. Thank you. Good morning. And welcome. I would like to start by saying a special thank you to Mary Kay and to the BM team for inviting me to be here because I am learning so much. It is incredible. This is really very much part of my journey too, and you are all contributing in your own way as well. So this is wonderful. I'd like to share a few things with you today about collaboration between L2 specialists and guides. I'm going to tell you a little bit about where I'm from. My name's Jenny. I've been working in Centro Internacional María Montessori in Málaga, in Spain, for about 6 years now. But I've only really been in the role of a bilingual program coordinator for the last year. It's something which I'm still learning to do, and I'm learning a lot about, again, with the help of Mary Kay and the BM team. Before that, I was one of those L2 specialists that dipped in and out of elementary and of children's houses and of infant community and felt and lived what a lot of you are living here today as well. Right now, I have some teaching responsibilities in my adolescent community. Here is our little kitchen setup. It's a very nice place to be. I'm very happy in this environment, but I'm also dedicating a fair amount of my timetable to coordinating what's happening in English in the other stages in the school as well. Okay. So when Mary Kay asked me about doing this talk, I went back to this one time in a webinar. I think it was the beginning of one of her webinars when she talked about the relationship between ESL and Montessori environments being not such a natural marriage. And it really stuck out. And sorry, I'm speaking too fast. You're having, please do slow me down, okay? I'm a little nervous. It's the beginning of the presentation, and I'm sure that as we flow, I will slow. But do wave, thank you. Yeah. It's something that really stuck out in my mind when she said it, because it reminds you of these tensions that we've been talking about, of what's happening between the adults and the environments and what's happening on a team level. And it did just so happen, Marike, at the time that when you asked me to do this speech, I was reading a book about marital relationships written by a marriage counselor. And this sort of like my brain just went like this. And I was like, wow, okay, there are things that I'm reading about communication between humans that could maybe help when we're talking about communication between the people we work with at school. So I started reading a lot more that book, and I started thinking, okay, we need to really think about what we're doing here. Okay, it's a lot more than just, I need to get my Montessori curriculum across. It's a lot more than just, I need to be making sure that I'm teaching enough English. It's a lot more about how we talk to each other and why we talk to each other and why we do the things we do. Okay, so that's where this talk is going. Now, before we start talking really about how these relationships have started changing at my school, I'd like to give you a little bit of information about what our school was like, because I'm aware that there are many different models of schools here. There are schools which are full immersion. There are schools which were monolingual and then they're changing to bilingual. So I think it would help add clarity as well. And remembering what Lucy said yesterday about not everything works everywhere, but something will work somewhere in the world. So I'm hoping that there's something for you to take away in this sense here. Now, SIM was a very strongly monolingual school, very strong monolingual culture. It was not built with the idea of it being a bilingual school. It was built to serve the purpose of giving parents another pedagogical model, another type of education for their children. And those parents were Spanish, monolingual Spanish families with monolingual cultures. And then they came across this need for some accreditation in Spain. So they chose the New England Association of Schools and Colleges, which is an American organization some of you may be familiar with. And they require for 50% of the curriculum to be delivered in English, apart from many other requirements, which thankfully at SIM are being fulfilled. On the human side, we're doing very well, but the bilingual side is something that we've been struggling with. And so in this context, English was an afterthought. It was like, okay, we'll get ready for this, but really it's just an added on extra thing that we need. And it's mostly for the paperwork. It's not really a part of who we are. It's because I need to exist here. And that really is very much at the core of our situation in Malaga. And I think it is starting to change now. We're starting to warm to this idea of welcoming a bilingual culture and a bilingual school, but it's definitely where we came from. In this context, the specialist has this dipping in and out of environments role. They float between places. There's very little time with the children. Sometimes teaching is done in large groups because of time constraints, and you're feeling that, how do I get to see every child every day? And it's not always possible. Teaching was often done outside of the environment. I have memories of seeing some of my English specialist colleagues sitting on the floor in halls with other children walking past and trying to teach something with constant distraction, and it was really not the way to go. The impact in terms of learning was very little, I believe. And also in this way, a relationship with English was modeled for the children. The people, the adults who were responsible for delivering this content in English were pushed out physically, and it was something that was different. And so when we think about ourselves as being role models, as a key piece of the triangle in Montessori education, we're also modeling that behavior for the children. And then we're also almost inviting the children to have the same regard for English and for the English specialists as they do, as the main guides are doing when they push us out. There's also no real need for coordination in this kind of model, because each one just comes in and works as they work and then leaves. Yes, it's the same children. Yes, they're working around the same topics, more or less, in terms of maybe the vocabulary that they're looking at, but the approaches are completely different. And they're not even in the same room together at the same time. So there's no real need. Maybe even in this kind of context, there's fewer conflict, or there's less tension, in the sense that there's no real need for this collaboration. No? I'd like to take you back to thinking about marriage, and imagining in a household where you have one parent who comes in half the time and does things one way, and then another parent who comes in and does things the other way half the time. And I would like you now to think about how easy it would be to achieve common goals in this kind of context. What would that household look like? I imagined it to look a little something like this, with parents who are sharing a space with their children, with parents who may be feeling like they do have common goals, but come from such different places and give such different messages to the children, that the children end up doing exactly what they like and really not gaining anything from this. Okay, and this was another little reflection that I had whilst I was reading. Fortunately, at SIM, we're in a process of change, and it's really been catalyzed these last couple of years, or this last year particularly. And it's been down to a lot of communication and a lot of pushing. And there have been some key moments that I'm going to share with you later. Okay, but the situation right now is that English is taught inside the environment. And that there are more English specialists. This has also been a need which has been recognized. Before, it was like a one specialist per school kind of job, and now there are more of us. Every environment has an English speaker, except from the elementary environments, where the ratio is one English speaker to two environments. But again, we're pushing for more. So that should happen soon, I hope. And also the guides and specialists have now entered into a relationship where they want to work together. And this for me has been a life-changing moment at SIM, and it's really the core of this talk today. And it's really also another thing that we really need to draw our attention to, because in a context where guides and specialists want to work together, they need support. because they come from very different places. One thing is working side by side, but not really sharing. Another thing is working together. And that's where the support is needed, really. Okay. Of course, this entails negotiation. And negotiation is something which comes up when different cultures come together. And remember that we're talking about teams built up of people from different places in the world, and that are also part of, different places, and who are bringing their own baggage to the whole situation as well. And I would like to talk here a little bit about culture, because for me, it's really important to frame this. For me, culture is very, very complex. And I think it's a great moment now for you just to have a little think amongst yourselves, okay? Take maybe a couple of minutes to think about how many cultures you feel you belong to, okay? I'm just gonna leave it there. I'm gonna give you a couple of minutes to have a think, and then I'd like to share, okay? Okay. Sounds like we've found a few things to talk about. It's not an easy question.
No, it's not. Definitely not. What the first one you're gonna think, okay, what do we mean by culture?
Exactly. That's it. Thank you, Gloria. Okay, so first question back. What do we mean by culture? What is culture? I'm talking about something that I haven't defined enough. Okay, but we do tend to understand culture in a general sense of, well, which country are you from? Oh, okay, I must have British culture because I'm from Britain, and you Spanish culture because you're from Spain. But it's not. It's a lot more complex than that. Okay, we could talk about things like family heritage and ancestry. What's been going on in my family and my roots? What about geographic locations where I've lived, or maybe where I'm living now, or if I've moved? And I had a wonderful conversation with Florencia yesterday when we were going to visit the Anderlecht school, and she said, I've lived in so many countries that I don't really feel like I'm from anywhere anymore. And it's like, I'm not from anywhere, but I'm from everywhere, you know? And I was like, it's so true. It's like at the heart of everything, you know, like, and all of these do have an influence in how we perceive the world and in what values we hold deep down. So yes, this is there as well. Ethnic background as well. Where are mom and dad from? What's my ethnic heritage there going on, you know? Languages and communication. Which languages do I use for what? No, I'm very much in that sense. I was educated in the UK, and my education has mostly been done in English. But then I moved to Spain, and I did some more studies there. And maybe there are even children who end up moving from one country to another during very crucial steps in their education, you know? And that has an impact too, because education frames the way you see the world as well. Religious and spiritual traditions can also have an impact. Your professional and educational, what we were talking about before, if that's connected to a certain language or a certain communication, but also to certain ways of doing things. You know, in some countries, things are studied one way, in other countries, they're studied another way. And then even within a same country, we can have different pedagogies telling us that we should be doing things in different ways too. So there are many, many things going on. And generational experiences too. Okay, and these are just a few. I'm sure you could continue adding to the list and then thinking about how complex this question really is. And really, my purpose today is not to say, okay, we need to be thinking about 5 billion things, but it is to be saying, there's a lot going on under the water. Let's have a little look about, you know, let's try and think and listen. Huh? So yes, it's now quite complex. And this was when I was thinking as well, like with all these complexities, something like the iceberg model could really help us understand how these things can play in communication between people. No? You may be familiar with this model. It originated, I think, in the 1970s. Edward T. Hall is attributed to it, but I don't think that it's actually like a fixed attribution. It kind of got generated within cultural studies and communication studies. And although it needs to be used with caution, I think we need to be careful for it not to become something which oversimplifies regard on culture. It definitely does help us understand that there is something that happens above the water and there is something that happens below the water. Okay, so in this model, basically the idea is that there are elements of visible culture, and that's what we see, okay, in the environment, and that's what we see in the world. So we can see differences between each other by the way we dress, by the different traditions and rituals we might have, customs, symbols, behavior, how loud or quietly we speak, many things going on there that are tangible. Right? And then there are lots of other elements which are under the water. And this is the invisible stuff. Now, what happens? The lower down, basically, the deeper it runs, the more important it is for me. And I'm guessing, no, I'm thinking and I'm experiencing that these things here are the things that drive what happens above the water. So these things here are the things that we need to understand if we want to help reduce tensions, okay, at school, because it's something which is going to dictate how we approach different situations, and we're going to do it in different ways because we're from different places and because we have different cultures. Okay, and that's the way this is going to work. So I wanted to illustrate this with a very personal example. I hope my husband doesn't mind. I haven't told him that I'm doing this today. But basically, I am a mother of 2 children and I live in Spain. My children are Spanish. It's very much the dominant culture in where we live. And but I do have my British roots, you know, and I also have my family's roots and my family values, and he has his family roots and his family values too. What happens above the water in my house is that the children are nearly always barefoot. Nearly always barefoot. I see this rings a bell. Now, it seems very trivial, a child being barefoot. How could this possibly cause conflict? It did. For years, years and years, and we would constantly, and maybe it was being barefoot, but it also might be to do with not wearing a coat when you go outside, being in a short sleeve t-shirt when it's like 12 degrees, you know, things like this. It's not just the barefoot issue, but I'm drawing on the barefoot issue. Okay, and obviously, well, yes, it was a cause of conflict, and you kind of think, okay, well, what's the problem? The kid could put the shoes on, the kid could not put the shoes on. But when we link it down to what was really happening under the water, we understand where the conflict came from. And it was this. In my house, when I was a child, we grew up barefoot. We went everywhere without shoes and socks, whether it was in the garden, in the house, whatever the weather, it was fine. My parents thought, and that was their culture, which was being instilled in me, that it was good for my development. You receive a lot of information through the soles of your feet. You know, it was like all about learning how to balance and, you know, feeling the world, and also like coordination and gross motor skills, and so many things were going on. Apart from that, we loved it. I mean, sorry, am I going too fast again here? We loved it. It just felt good. You know, children like being barefoot. Or certainly in my house, it was that way. In Jose's house, it was forbidden. The children did not go barefoot. And in fact, exactly. Catching a cold, or sorry, being barefoot means that you catch a cold. And
everybody knows you get viruses from your feet.
Exactly.
Everyone knows.
Gloria, thank you so much. My children right now this weekend are in my mother-in-law's house, and I'm 100% sure that they are wearing socks and shoes. Why? Because being barefoot in Spain means being cold, means catching a cold, means getting sick, which means being not a good parent. Me as a parent, I have a responsibility to ensure that my child does not get sick. This means that my child needs to wear shoes and socks. Okay, in winter, and even in summer, I've heard the argument that they get dirty feet, and then we have to go and wash whatever the reason is. Okay, there's something under there that is it's very important for my husband, and I need to be able to recognize that part of what's happening in the communication there, in the same way that I ask him to try and understand that there is a developmental reason behind the children being barefoot. So in the end, we kind of end up doing a 50-50, or like, to be fair, I think he has almost given up. But there are still times when he feels like he's back in his territory, and, you know, the socks and shoes go on. But that's it. Where I was wanting to take this was back to our context too at school, and thinking about what's happening when we're dealing with the children in our environments. What is it that's moving us under the water to adopt certain behaviors in the classroom, to adopt certain ways of working in the classroom? And really, you can think about it in a very similar way. And on this point, I would just like to talk about the steps in the iceberg process, so that when we get into the practical side of things, you can see how this could be applied. So first of all, we're identifying. Oh, sorry, I have loads of ones. I don't know what happened there. It should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Well, the first one is to identify the surface problem. Okay, so being barefoot, for example, is a surface problem because it causes tension. And then determine the underlying causes, which we've spoken about now. Okay, being a good parent, being a bad parent, these values that are deep down underneath. And then we can talk about determining possible solutions. And from there, it's an easy ride. But the first 3 steps are hard. Because first of all, you have to recognize that there's a problem. And to recognize that there's a problem, you need an adult with an open enough mind to being able to see that there's more than one way of looking at the picture, you know? And then we need to determine the underlying causes. And there's a lot of listening in this part. And I invite you as school administrators, guides, and specialists to all play a big part in this process as well. Really, this is the key. Determining the underlying causes and everybody being able to express how they feel about this and why, especially the why, is what really, really helps. And then from there, well, it's possible to discover like what's negotiable, what's not negotiable, and why. And maybe we can talk about compromises or acceptance, simply that some things are going to be done that way. And I, as an adult, have to let go and say, okay, well, that's that. You know, you have to recognize where your limitations are as well. I would like to add also that nonviolent communication plays a great role in the second step of determining the underlying causes. Okay, being capable of recognizing what are the emotions, what are the facts, like what actually has happened, how I have felt, how the other might have felt. How could we deliver those messages between each other in a way that's not going to cause this huge conflict or certain elements of tension? No, that's also very, very key. Okay. So thinking about Montessori and ESL with all of this information in mind, I'd like us to think a little bit about the role of the adult, okay, in the classroom, because this tends to be one of the ones that comes up and certainly causes conflict in my school. Well, tension. Conflict is a very strong word. Tension would be more appropriate, okay? So the role of the adult in ESL teaching tends to be this. The adult is a central figure. Okay, the adult is the person who gives direct instruction, and this is because the students have little autonomy in L2. Okay, what I've done here is I've tried to sort of like identify what would be happening on the surface. So the adult being the central figure is what's visible, and the why is because the children don't have the autonomy. So the belief that's coming from the specialist is that I need to guide this because my students don't know how to do it on their own. Okay. In the second one as well, structured lessons and activities and guided interaction. It's because this is what I'm doing, and it's because I feel, again, the students don't have the autonomy to be doing this on their own. Okay, so these are the whys. The underlined reasons is why I'm doing what I'm doing. The teacher models language and directs students to ensure specific language outcomes. Again, we're trying to help them reach specific criteria, specific competencies. We're selecting vocabulary, we're selecting expressions with the goal of helping them gain basic competencies in L2. We're chunking language for them and we're drilling those chunks. Okay, and the reason why is because we're looking to build this competence. Now, what happens in a Montessori environment? The adult takes a completely different role. They're a facilitator. The students work with the materials. They're ready to work with them autonomously because the guide waits and presents the material when the children are ready. And then the children are independent and they may work alone. And this in turn helps them become more independent, one of the key values in Montessori education. Okay, so again, you can see the role of the adult there. What's visible is that the adult facilitates, doesn't intervene. And the why is because we want them to be autonomous. And we're waiting for them to be ready to be autonomous, to be working with that material. Again, the guide gives suggestions and only intervenes when necessary or requested. We need to foster that independence. It's a key value there. Okay, it's something which deep down is deep down under the water. Okay, students work with material that teach them a variety of things. Sorry. It's holistic development. It's key. Okay, I'm not just isolating one piece of information, one lesson, so that I can learn one thing. With one piece of material in a Montessori environment, I'm working on lots of different skills. Okay, and that again is something we might find that could be a cause of possible tension between one and another. Okay, so just remember where I was going with this. Okay, so this was really key for me as well in helping understand what was happening between my ESL specialists and my guides. Okay, what are the driving forces behind the way they work in the classroom? Okay, and this was when I had a really big turning point at school, and from all of these questions, it was like, okay, I need to know more. And knowing more means training. And this was the biggest turning point for us in the last year. We did the bilingual Montessori training course. The English specialists did it. Our main elementary guide coordinator did it. Okay, we have 4 elementary guides. Unfortunately, not all 4 could do it, but the coordinator could. And that has had a huge impact as well. Okay. It's really helped her understand the whole process of second language acquisition. It's really helped her understand the frustrations that we feel as English specialists. And in turn, it's helped the English specialists understand the frustrations that she feels too. And being able to work together on a plan that has a purpose at our school, which is to help cooperate together, has been fundamental. So this has been fantastic. In infant community and in children's houses, the guides or the English specialists have had training in phonics and in sound awareness. Again, I think really deep down it was something that they would have been able to do without too much training, because phonics and the Montessori approach is very similar. But it's given them that confidence to take that step forward, to start working with sounds in the same way that we do with children in English. Sorry, I skipped the top one as well. So the specialists have followed AMI training courses as well. They haven't done full guide training, but certainly looking into orientation and assistantships has helped us understand a lot about the whole philosophy behind everything that moves. I do think also that it would be a fantastic goal to set that everybody has the AMI guide training as well, whether they're an English specialist or not working in the environments. And again, training needs to be ongoing. We can never learn enough, and things change, and sometimes we need to find, solutions to new demands that we have. Okay. So this has been one thing that has really worked for us, and the key thing I think that has worked, because when we've trained, we've learned what's moving, or the behavior behind, what's underneath the water for the other people too. Okay. We've also improved our communication. It's done a lot better. It's true that at SIM, we've always followed a nonviolent communication process, but I think we're learning to look more lovingly at each other and more understandingly at each other, because we're starting to look under the water a lot more. And that's really helping. Actually, this is now updated. I was so pleased when I wrote this presentation, because now the whole stage of elementary coordinate twice a month. But it's not the case anymore. When I submitted this, it was Monday last week. Plum and Annie did it. And then on Wednesday, I had a meeting with my elementary guides and with my specialists. And they said, Jenny, can we meet every week? And I was like, yes, yes, you can. I mean, obviously, there's that moment of like negotiating when, where, what's going to be talked about. But for me, it was like a big moment. And I was like, okay, it's good. They're expressing that they have this need to meet more often. Okay. And they also meet weekly per environment between the specialists and guides. And this has helped a lot too. Okay, again, the principles of nonviolent communication are important. Our school regularly organizes training in this for the whole team. It's always good to do a refresher every now and then, because there are things that you do forget about sometimes in your day-to-day. And with the pace of life sometimes. Mediation. Okay, now that the role of an English coordinator has been created at SIM, there is a great deal of mediation that gets done, and it is me who's doing it. And I'm, trying to help both sides look at what each other are doing, And there's more team building as well. Meditation and group reflection are a super important part of us feeling like we're all part of the same team. Because again, in the day-to-day, I imagine your own experience of this is as well, that there's not always enough time to really connect with the people who you're working with. And when I mean connect, it's like going back to marriage counseling. You see each other every day because you live in the same house, you have the same children, you have the same objectives, you love each other. But finding that date night with your husband or your wife, it's something that has to be organized when you have kids. I mean, it's not easy. For me to be able to go out for dinner with my husband, I need to work out who I can leave the children with, if we're both free, the romance of things being, oh, it'll just happen because we like each other and we want to go. Yes, but you have time constraints and you have children, it has to be organized. And I think this is also a very important part of a coordination role between two sets of people, okay? The role of the coordinator. Okay, this is my last point. I'm not sure how I'm doing for time, actually. I'm okay, Lucy says. Okay. This is a new role for me. I'm still learning a lot. But I have come across a few pitfalls. The biggest one, I think, biggest aha moment was that I was proposing objectives and I was planning where this should be going with an outside perspective. Because I was thinking, okay, so we need to reach this level by this age and this level by, so we would need to be working on this, this, and this. And then I was like, okay, so you should be doing maybe 2 presentations a week in English and you should be working, and it just didn't happen. Why didn't it happen? Because, yeah, exactly, because I was on the outside and the people who I wanted to work had their own ways of working. And I'm sorry as well, but Montessori people are independent. They are free thinkers. They are non-conformist. And so when you come from the outside and you say, I want you to do this, this, and this, they're like, why? They need to be part of the plan. Objectives cannot be set from the outside. The guides need to be in on the objective setting for ESL. If the guides are not in on the objective setting for ESL, they will not feel part of the objectives, and then they will not collaborate in the same way. When guides and specialists work together to set the objectives, then it's going to be a lot easier. They're going to start looking for material together. And that's happening at my school. They're starting to look together for material that will help them. There's also a need for enough knowledge from both approaches. Again, going back to what we talked about earlier with the training, it's necessary for guides to know what SLA is about, and it's necessary for ESL guides to know what Montessori is about. How are we ever going to understand each other if we're both coming from different worlds and we're not looking at what the other one is doing? And there's also been a lack of clarity from management, I think. And I think that this sometimes can have a big impact. And again, maybe we can link it in to a need for enough knowledge for both approaches. Maybe administrators should be doing all of these courses too. They should be here present at these conferences too. They need to know what's happening under the water for everybody and how this can possibly fit together. If I come in from the outside and I say, okay, this should be done like this because that's what I think, but I haven't really been through the whole process of understanding what second language acquisition is about and how that could possibly fit into a Montessori environment, I'm going to make proposals that might not work because I'm going to be making guesses. Huh? So again, it's really a whole team thing. Okay, some steps that have had a positive impact. Identifying obstacles in communication. This has been key this year, okay? It allows you to mediate to a certain degree where necessary, and it allows you to help people to communicate a lot better, okay? So going back to iceberg models, thinking about what's really happening there, okay? Nonviolent communication as well, really listening, what are feelings and what's fact, no? Persisting with management and everybody else to make them a part of this, okay? If you're given the role of a coordinator, it doesn't mean that you just make a plan and everybody follows. As we've seen before, it doesn't happen like that, okay? This is everybody's deal. If it's a bilingual school, everybody needs to be on board. And this is something which really came across in one of Lucy's webinars. I think it was on the companion course. And she said something which was, again, like a wow moment for me, and it was that you need everybody on board. Okay, and getting everybody on board is not something that you can force either. It's something that you have to make happen. You're like snake charmers. Okay, you need to use the romance. You need to use you really need to key into what's happening there. Why aren't people coming on board? Maybe they don't feel like being part of a bilingual is right, a bilingual program. Well, if it's not right for you, maybe we need to reassess whether you really want to be working at a bilingual school. Things need to be taken into balance there. Supporting your team emotionally. Active listening. You cannot listen enough. There is something magic about listening. When you listen, tension drops because people feel heard. And listening is not just, listening. It's active listening. It's keying into, really listening into what they're trying to say to you there, and helping find responses for this as well. Creating a safe learning environment, not only for your children at school, but also for your staff. My reality is at SIM is that I have many staff who do not have a very high level of English. I have others that do. And for those who feel insecure about what they're doing in English, it makes the whole job of modeling behavior with an English specialist incredibly difficult. So you need to help them with that as well. We've started playing games at my school. We've started doing the Spanglish challenge, Spanglish sentence challenge, and we chunk sentences together with chunks of language from English and Spanish, and then we play on WhatsApp Christmas Spanglish challenge, or we try to break the ice in that way to make it normal. It's okay to translanguage. It's okay to put different words into sentences, and it's okay to ask, how did you say? And it's okay to say, I've forgotten how to, and it's okay to make the mistake. And it's actually very, very enriching for a main guide to make a mistake in the foreign language when they're speaking to the specialist, for the specialist to correct the main guide, and for that to be an open part of the learning process, because then the children will be open to making it. It's fostering that environment. And that, again, takes a little touch of magic and a lot of play.
Do you sell magic wands?
I don't sell magic wands, no, but we do play a lot of games. And we do remember as well that even the English specialists, when we're speaking other language, sometimes, we make mistakes in Spanish too, and we ask how to say things, and it's normal and it's part of the process, It just needs to be something normal. And yes, I'm ending here with what I'm saying to you guys, okay? And it's just remembering as well, it's a long process, and you need to reflect, and you need to breathe, and you need to accept the limitations that there are. And this is something which I think over time, it takes time and it takes experience. And at the beginning, it's frustrating, but just learning to deal with that frustration. And it's also a very important part of this role. So this is what I do sometimes: take a little run, go to the sea, watch sunrise, and then everything in the world seems right again, and you're in with a new energy. And you can go in as well and be a healthy adult, sustaining other healthy adults. Okay. So with this in mind, I'm going to give you, how are we for time, Lucy? Do I?
45 minutes for discussion.
Great. This is wonderful. Okay. So my proposal for you now, okay, is to try and think about all the things that we've been talking about with icebergs and culture and seeing the underneath values and things, and to try to apply it, okay, in a series of role plays. Okay. I have some scenarios which I've typed out. Many of them are from very real situations that have happened at my school, and maybe you will identify with them too. And I'm going to give you, let's say we have 45 minutes or so. Let's think about working in groups of 3, okay? Each group will need one person to be an L2 specialist, one person to be a Montessori guide, and one person to be a coordinator. Okay, between the 2 roles. Okay, I'm happy for you to group yourselves however you like. Do move around, okay, and identify which role you would like to take. And then you have a series of things that you need to do. Okay, your specialists and your guides. You need to be working towards identifying and reacting to potential surface problems. Okay, so I'm going to give you a set of scenarios, and with your specialist head on or your Montessori guide head on, you need to think about what's going to happen if I'm following only my values when I walk in. I'm not thinking about what's moving the other person. I'm thinking about what's moving me underneath the water, okay? Coordinators. You need to be identifying potential service problems and then root causes for both. Okay, so this would be really helpful if it's like people who maybe like, well, I'm guessing actually a lot of us have a lot of experience of what's happening within the classrooms in this sense, okay? But what's moving the behavior under the water, okay? And then the coordinators will need to work with each party to propose solutions. And again, the guides and the specialists need to be made very much part of solution proposal as well. Because if not, again, as we've seen, it will be something that doesn't work. Okay. So, are we clear on the roles, more or less? Yes. Okay. I'm going to click to the scenarios. I'm going to invite you to work through them. Shall we work through them just freely? You can select which ones you would like to do and then maybe do two. And then we have like a bit of feedback. And then we can have a question and answer session towards the end. Okay? So.
Do we have too much same stages? Like children's house and elementary, or
however you feel more comfortable. It makes sense for it to be like that, but yeah. Okay, however you feel more comfortable. I'm going to try to make it a little bigger. I have 3. Can you read that? Okay. No. So let's do the first 2 to begin with. Maybe some of you choose. Is this better?
Yeah.
Okay. I can't fit 3 on.
You put into pages.
It will be small though. I want it on the screen. I'll tell you what we'll do. If we do, let's have a look at these 2 first. Choose one of these 2, and then in about 5 minutes, say 5-10 minutes, I will stop you and I will choose another 2. Okay?
Yeah.
Because I have loads. Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, let's open up to some questions and answers. Okay. I've heard some very interesting things. I'm glad that it seems to be engaging. Some of you have had some questions directly as well. The answer to these scenarios is that there is no one answer ever to anything in life. It's like when you're making cupcakes and you forget the recipe, but you know more or less, I don't know, like how you guys cook. Another little personal experience here for you. My husband is very methodological and everything has to be down to the right gram and the right time and the right temperature. And I'm an eggs in, that looks about right, check it in, stir it kind of girl. So mine is never exactly 100 grams or 98 grams or whatever it is. And this is the same deal. I mean, it's impossible. The ingredients are different every time you sit down at the table. And even if you have the same people, then maybe something has happened in that person's life or in that person's mindset. And suddenly you have to find yourself working in another way. So I'm sure that all of your work here is very valid and that you've been listening to each other and identifying different ways of working with these types of scenarios, okay? I would like to offer you the possibility of asking me a few questions now, if you had anything that you wanted to. Yes, here.
how many L2 specialists do you have in your setting or in your school?
Okay, so how many, yeah, how many across the board?
You were talking about the team meeting, so how many people we are talking about?
Okay, so we have let's start from the bottom. Okay, infant community, we have 1 Spanish-speaking guide, 1 English-speaking guide. In children's houses, there is 1 English and 1 Spanish per environment. We have 2. In lower elementary, we have 2 environments. And here we have 1 English specialist, which is split between both environments. In upper elementary, we have the same, 2 Spanish-speaking main guides with 1 specialist who switches between one and the other. And then in adolescent community, it's myself in there all the time with my co-guide, Luis, as well. This is not my idea of an ideal model. We would like to reach the 1 English specialist per environment stage. I'm hoping that that's going to be able to happen very soon. And yes, when talking about meetings, we have made it so that once per month, each stage must meet together everybody on the team. So all 4 elementary guides plus the 2 specialists, minimum once per month. The same in children's houses, all the guides and all the specialists, minimum once per month. What's happened in elementary is that they've realized that they need more than that. And they're now finding the time to do that once a week. And that for me has been a real true present this week. Actually, it just happened. It's something that I'm sure that not all of the guides feel 100% comfortable about because it means more time. But I'm positive that the impact will be very, very beneficial. And I'm pretty sure that it's not going to take long before they realize that it is helping. So, yeah.
In relation to scenario 6,
Yeah.
do you use assessments in English or the second language, and how do you do it?
Yes, the approach is to use the Cambridge can-do statements. We're using them to base the exercises that we select for when we're working with the children. They get assessment at the beginning of the year, in the second trimester, and then in the last trimester. The students, we use a lot the approach of the Cambridge Young Learners Suite. We do not use the full exam. We do not present it as if it was a full exam. We work with small groups. It's like a try it on your own exercise. It's not presented as a test. The children are aware that it is assessment, I must admit, but it's not in exam conditions per se. Let's just try and see what you can do on your own with this exercise. This has been working like this at our school for the last couple of years, and one of the biggest pieces of work that we're doing is linking in the can-do statements with this. And then the numerical score is never shared with the child, ever. That's kept for guides reference or for specialists reference. The thing that goes down on the child's report is he or she can understand everyday conversations about blah, blah, blah. Okay. And again, that's information which is then relayed to the parents at the end of the year in the final report. Yeah. Okay. Yes, over here.
So just going back to when the guides meet, is that during the school day or is it before school, after school?
It's after. We have an extended timetable in the afternoons, 2 days a week. One of those is for the guides to do their preparation, and another day is for them to coordinate as well and do prep. So Wednesday afternoons in primary, there are no lessons, but the guides do have the extended timetable, and that's when they sit down together. But I'm sure that you're aware that the work at school is never ending, and there's always a little something to squeeze in somewhere else.
And what's the percentage of content delivery in English and Spanish in your school?
Content, you refer to like other subject content?
Yes. So is your school like sort of immersion school, or do you teach them in English, them in Spanish? Or?
Our school right now is at the point where we are looking for ways to raise the level of English, basically. We've come to the stage where the guides and everybody has sort of like realized that the children don't have enough language to really access academic content in English. And so the focus right now is building up English. It's true that in secondary, the level, it's quite mixed, but we have a lot of children with more or less B2 and above. So it is possible for them to study geography and history, for example, in English, and that is being done. And it's true that the specialists do try to select topics that fit in with what the main guides are doing. So if they're working on I don't know, the water cycle or weather or something, there is material that can be used with a lot of like adaptation, a bit like what we were seeing yesterday with Birgitte's talk. And there are many, many ideas from Jana Winnefeld as well in response to this. The Modern Montessori Guide, I think she references as well in there. That's material which I feel that once children have a certain level of English, it's quite easy for them to be able to work with. However, at my school, we're still working on reaching that level.
So the main lessons are taught in Spanish?
Yes, very much so.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We probably have similar setting as it is in your school. We have like 4 environments: primary, lower, upper elementary, adolescent program, and in each environment we have a full English speaking person in the other language element as a check. Well, what is mine now concern is how to link the knowledge through the whole process of learning. Like, you said, I come there or they come there and they teach whatever they think it's fit, but then you might have sort of like a tipping points from one class going from lower elementary to upper elementary, whatever. So that's actually my topic now, like in the head, how to make a line, like language line, because we expose the kids to the English, and actually it works very well. They know the English at the end quite really nicely, but sort of like, I don't know, somehow just the curriculum linkage. How do you work with that in your school?
Right now, it's starting to happen really with this more collaboration between the guides and the specialists, and they're still very much in the process of defining what is easily adaptable and what is not to their needs and to fitting the language teaching needs as well. It's something which I think can depend greatly on each environment as well, because many times you have a guide who feels comfortable with a certain topic in English and is happy to be, and that does happen as well at our school. There are guides who feel comfortable enough to teach something in another language. Yeah, and so I think really it's a case of registering along the way of what's happening in each environment. This information we use transparent classroom to register what's happening across the stages. And so when one child moves from one stage to another, you can access the lessons that they've had in certain things. I would like to add also that there's a lot of what is the day-to-day basic communication, which is repetitive and which needs to be repetitive for many years before really they can move into academic content. And I think that's really the main goal at the beginning. And then from there, any other subject is easily to, built on in that sense. Okay. Yes? Sorry.
As a coordinator, how often do you meet with the team of every stage?
Okay, so I meet with my elementary specialists and guides once every 2 weeks. I meet with my English specialists independently of that once a month. Yeah. No, from elementary. I'm with my elementary specialists once per month, then twice a week with my elementary specialists and my guides. So it's a lot of meetings. I do a lot of meetings with my infant community guidance specialist once per trimester, more or less. It's not such a pressing need at the moment. With my children's houses, I'm meeting, I think, twice a trimester with both specialists together. And in adolescent community, I'm lucky enough, formally meeting, really perhaps it's something that we should make as on our to-do list. My colleague Jose Luis, but we see each other every day, so we tend to do that kind of thing that you shouldn't do and catch up at breakfast and tell each other what we should be doing and share our concerns there. So yes, that happens almost on a daily basis.
This is within the school hours or
It's within school, it's within our school hours. There aren't always children there because of the timetable that the children have, but it's within schooling hours, yeah.
So you don't have an after-school program then?
Not at the moment, no.
So what time do you finish?
The children are there from 8:30 until 2:30 in the case of elementary. In secondary, they do have extended timetable until 4:30 in the afternoon. Okay. Okay, any other questions? No? Okay, well, thank you very much for listening. There is one final thing I would like to share with you. And it's something that I saw yesterday when we took a tour around the Anderlecht school. Where is it now? I can't see it. Oh, hang on, I'll see if it's here. Nope. Here it is. We saw this yesterday at school in Prague, and I just fell in love with it because it's very much what's underneath all of this. Okay, a team is not a group of people who work together at all. It's a team of people who trust each other, and finding that trust is based on what we understand of each other. Okay, it's trusting the other person to do the job that they need to do for the reasons that they bring to the table. And I think for me, this is super key in all of this. So anyway, it was super nice. I saw it yesterday morning, and I was like, I need this in my life. I'm going to put it in my school too. Okay. Thank you so much for listening to me. I hope it's been interesting.
Thank you.
Thank you.